GTA 5 is now well over 11 years old, which is around the time most people keep their car. So what if you decided to sell your first car in today's market? To figure this out, we have to find out the depreciation. If you're not familiar with depreciation, it is when a car loses its value as time goes on. For example, when you buy a new car that costs $50,000, it will lose value quite quickly. Once you drive it off the dealership lot, it's now worth a lot less because it is a second-hand car. Often this is already multiple of thousands of dollars. After 1 year, the depreciation is often around 20%. So in this case, our $50,000 car would be worth only $40,000. But there are caveats, which can change this value. Some cars depreciate at a much higher or much slower rate. Extreme examples are cars like a Porsche 911 GT3 RS, which is a very limited and exclusive car, causing it to actually become more expensive once it ends up on the second-hand market. The same goes for very rare super and hypercars that often get sold for multiple of millions. On the other end of the socio-economic ladder, cars often depreciate less than average. Especially very durable cars like Toyotas, for example, don't depreciate as fast as they're still reliable after a couple of years. This same thing can't be said for big luxury cars. These depreciate at an incredible pace. Not only is the percentage of depreciation quite big, the total dollar amount of depreciation is immense as well, as these cars boast high initial price tags. Think about cars like high-end BMWs, Audis, Maserati and big American SUVs. So, to calculate the depreciation of your first car in GTA 5, we have to consider what type of car it is, so you can compare it to its closest real-life counterparts. The first car I'm going to be discussing is the LG RH8. This car is free for any player who signed up for Social Club. Also back in 2013, it was the best sports car, which made it the first car for a lot of people. It is mostly based on a 2011 Nissan GT-R, so we use this car to base our depreciation on. The LG RH8, although free for most players, does actually have a price tag of $95k, which can use to determine its value if you were to sell it today in 2025. A 2011-ish GT-R were sold for around $69,000 back in the day. Nowadays, they're still worth around 50 to 60k. Considering some of them have extra options, it is fair to say that the depreciation is around 20%, which means the LG RH8 you bought in 2013 for $95,000 is now worth around $76,000, which is, all things considered, pretty decent for a 11-year-old car. The second car we're going to look up is the Dominator, which is mostly based on a 2012-ish Ford Mustang. This car boasts a relatively modest price tag of $35,000, which coincidentally is also the real-life price tag, which makes this one quite easy. A little bit of research shows that a V8 Mustang from right around the 2012 build year is worth right around 18k today, meaning your Dominator from 2013 has lost almost half its value. The third car we're going to be looking at is the Adder. While it might not be the first car for most people, it certainly was one of the first supercars for a lot of people. The Adder, priced at $1 million, is based on a Bugatti Veyron, which has a very interesting depreciation curve. Bugatti as a brand will see a very steep depreciation at first, but it stabilizes after a little bit. This is mostly due to its very high price tag. The Veyron currently is at a point where it's getting towards an age where the value could increase in the future, but it's not quite there yet. Combined with its relatively large production number of 450, for hypercar standards this is relatively high, its value nowadays is a little bit under its initial price. So the Adder, which was priced at $1 million originally, will have depreciated by about 10%, which would make it worth right around $900,000, which isn't too bad of a bet. The fourth car we're going to be looking at is the Tailgater, mostly known from being Michael's car in story mode. I thought it would be interesting to have this car as it's based mostly on a 2010-ish Audi A6 A8, which, as I mentioned in the intro, have very high depreciation. And this holds true for the Tailgater as well. The original price of an Audi A6 is around 40 to 60,000 depending on options, but because it's also somewhat based on a more expensive Audi A8, I will assume Michael has a higher spec A6, so it will be around 55,000, which also happens to be the price of the Tailgater. Nowadays these cars are worth around 10,000, which means a Tailgater realistically has depreciated by over 80%, leaving you with a very mealy 10k like I just said. The fifth car is also owned by a protagonist of the story. It is Franklin's Buffalo S, a car also popular in the early days of the multiplayer. It is based on the 2013 Dodge Charger SRT8, which originally was priced at around 42k. which is a lot less than the $96,000 the GTA version costs. Currently, if you want to buy a 2013 SRT8, you will have to pay somewhere around $15,000, which means the car has depreciated by around 65%, which means the Buffalo S with its original price tag of $96,000 will now be worth roughly $33,000. The sixth car I want to discuss is the Futo. It was a cheap car priced at only $9,000 that would also spawn very often in traffic, making it the ideal first car. Its performance might have not been amazing on track, but its driftability and icon status due to Initial D made it a fun car to own. This icon status, however, is also why its depreciation is a bit different. So first of all, the Futo, or rather its real-life counterpart, the E8611, was released in the mid-80s, with a modest price tag of around $7,000, which made it a fun and affordable sports car. However, due to the popularity of Initial D, which featured an A86 Terreno and an A8511, the prices of both the Terreno and 11 shot up. The price increase is not as drastic for the 11, but it's still quite high considering it's a cheap car from the 80s. In 2013, an A86 11 would have been worth around $10,000. Meanwhile, nowadays it is worth $20,000, meaning its price has doubled, which means the Futo would now be worth $18,000. Also, a little fun fact, if the Futo would have been based on the Terreno variant, it would have been the car that gained the most value in this video. This title, however, goes to the next car. The last car I want to discuss is the Z-Type, which is based on the Bugatti Type 57 Atlantic, which is one of the most expensive cars on the planet. There are only 3 ones in existence that we know of, which makes it a very rare and expensive car. Finding a price for it was hard because they don't regularly get sold because there's only 3 of them. However, I did find a price from around 2010, which was between 30 and 40 million US dollar on auction. So for the release of GTA 5 in 2013, I will set it at 40 million, which is a lot compared to the in-game price of only 950,000 in GTA Online. Little side note / fun fact, in story mode, that car is actually priced at 10 million, which is a lot more than in online and also a little bit closer to its real life price. Nowadays, experts estimate that a Bugatti Type 57 Atlantic would sell for around $100 million, meaning its price has more than doubled, which means the Z-Type would now be worth a cool $2.375 million, which is a lot, but compared to $100 million doesn't sound that cool, but it's still the biggest appreciation within this video, with the price increasing 2.5 times, which is higher than the 2 times of the Futo, and much higher than all the depreciation occurring in the other vehicles.